Hi, I'm Bob Orr, and this is Washington Unplugged. As the nation mourns the passing of Senator Ted Kennedy, his dream of health care reform, at least for the moment, remains unrealized. But now some Democrats on Capitol Hill are saying Kennedy's passing should be a rallying point of sorts, maybe an incentive to push forward with a comprehensive reform package. So a couple of questions today. What will happen when Congress gets back to work in the next 2 weeks? And what impact specifically will Kennedy's death have on the debate? To talk about this today, I'm joined at the desk by Jonathan Weisman of the Wall Street Journal. Jonathan, welcome. And also standing by at the Washington Post is Ezra Klein. Ezra, hi to you as well. Let's start with you, Jonathan. I know it's an unknown, but what is the prevailing view on the Hill? What do we think the impact might be of the passing of Senator Kennedy?
Well, you know, we got a statement from Nancy Pelosi not an hour after we learned that Senator Kennedy had died, saying that health care reform would be passed this year and would be passed in honor of Senator Kennedy. She was not alone. This was a line that we heard from many, many Democrats. And I think at the very least, Kennedy's passing will tone the debate down, tone the screaming and these town halls down, and somewhat press the reset button. It's not necessarily, I don't think, that is going to carry the day, but for Democrats, anything that just tones things down is a good thing.
But Speaker Pelosi comes out and almost promises this is going to happen.
Right.
That's a bold promise considering the state of where the reform package is right now.
Absolutely. And I've been talking to Democrats today on the House side. They really still do remain confident that something is going to get passed. And if you look at kind of what the core that everyone seems to agree on, it's still pretty dramatic, even if they scale back on things like what we call the public option. There is a core that would be a dramatic change, and I think that a lot of Democrats realize they have more to lose by not passing something than by passing something at this point.
You mentioned the public option. Let's bring in Ezra Klein now. Senator Kennedy has long been advocating universal health care coverage. A public option, rather a government-run alternative to private insurance, would be pretty, well, not exactly universal, but it would be closer to that. Ezra, do you think the passing of Senator Kennedy gives impetus to that kind of idea?
You know, I don't know that it gives impetus to specific policy provisions. The Senator was certainly a supporter of the public option, but he was also a supporter on one of the key brokers in the Massachusetts healthcare reforms that did not include a public option. What I think a lot of people are taking from his death is that the end result is the outcome. I mean, you really can't look at his life. He began as a single-payer supporter and then supported everything from Clinton's Act to the incremental expansions of S-CHIP and the Portability Act. I mean, the guy was really about getting something done. And so I think you're really seeing a renewed desire to just get something done and take that lesson forward and recognize that, you know, if you fail here, then you just fail.
Of course, you've had some prominent Democrats in the past. I think of Howard Dean as one, essentially saying if you don't have something like a public option, then why bother?
Yeah, I think Dean is wrong on that. I mean, I remember looking back at his 2004 plan, and there's no public option in there. You know, I think a minute ago you said that the public option is sort of key for universal coverage, but a lot of these parties can be conducted another way, right? I mean, the key for coverage is subsidies, not the public option. And I was on the Ed Schultz show, and he said the public option is the key to making sure insurers don't discriminate on pre-existing conditions, but the key to doing that is just passing that law. So the public option is a very good way to create competition in the market and potentially, if it grows, create some sort of price leverage for certain consumers. But I don't think it's actually the key to reform. I just think it's a good policy proposal within the larger context of reform.
Let's talk now a little bit about the politics of this. So we have Speaker Pelosi saying this is going to get done, and we want to do it in honor, at least in part, in honor of Senator Kennedy.
That's right.
But she's got a problem, Jonathan, in that you've got a liberal bloc that sees things one way, then you have the so-called blue dogs that really don't want to sell a real expensive package back home. So where's the bridge, and are the Republicans going to help?
Well, remember, she has a big margin here. She's got about 40 Democrats she can give up and still pass this thing. She's not going to win everybody. She's not going to win all of the blue dogs or all of the progressives, the liberals who want to push this thing as far to the left as possible. But she has room to maneuver. And look, frankly, the only time I've ever seen Nancy Pelosi lose a major vote was the first financial bailout vote. And in that case, she lost it because she was expecting a lot of Republicans to come along. I've never seen her lose her conference, the Democratic conference, and I really don't believe she's going to. The problem has always been the Senate, and that problem is still there.
Now, if the blue dogs stay home with the Republicans, can the Democrats minus the blue dogs minus Republicans carry the day, and would they?
I think they can carry the day in the House. I don't think they can carry the day in the Senate. I mean, look, the Senate can do this parliamentary maneuver called reconciliation, in which they can pass some of the toughest things that they need to do with 51 votes. And look, the Democrats have, well, without Senator Kennedy, 59 votes. If Senator Byrd can come, they could probably let a few people slide. It's hard to imagine losing more than 8 or 9 Democrats. So if they do this, they can probably do it. But not everything can be done under reconciliation. Only budgety matters. Only things that are talking about raising taxes or raising spending on things like expanding Medicare or these subsidies for the purchase of insurance that Ezra was talking about. Then they'll have to do these policy issues like ending pre-existing conditions or ending the process of taxing or capping lifetime coverage from insurers. That can only be done with 60 votes. And that's a big question, because if they can't get those 60 votes, if the Republicans basically just rebel on principle because they got strong-armed on the other stuff, then they got real big problems.
Ezra, who's the deal maker in this potentially? I mean, Senator Kennedy was a well-known partisan. I mean, he was the liberal lion, but when it came crunch time, he was able to reach across the aisle and make the best deal. So who does that? Who plays his role here?
It depends on what sort of deal you want to make, right? I mean, for a while people thought maybe Max Baucus would be that deal maker, but everything I hear from the Hill, everything I hear from the Senate, everything I even hear from some people in the White House suggests that the prospects of that Gang of Six process moving anywhere are very, very dim, and people are essentially abandoning that. Now, if you're going to reconciliation, then essentially the leadership is a deal maker, right? Reid is a deal maker. It's about getting 51 Democrats on board and making sure nobody sort of attempts to actually block the maneuver. And then, on the other hand, when you're dealing with 60 votes and you're trying to get it, in fact, partially the Massachusetts legislature is a deal maker, because right now they're under pressure to change a 2004 law that made Senator Kennedy's replacement a 5-month away vote and doesn't create an interim senator. Kennedy wanted them to put in an interim senator who wouldn't run for the special election, but could be there to sort of preserve Mass's voice in it and essentially preserve Kennedy's vote for health care reform and the 60-vote margin. So it really depends on which procedural path you want to take, who gets to make that deal.
And Jonathan, finally, you look at this issue all the time. Can it be done? Can the differences be bridged? And can it be done in a way that the cost is saleable to the public?
Right. Well, the cost is really going to be the tax increases that are going to be, or the president is insisting on to make sure that this does not expand the budget in the short run. And that we haven't even seen exactly what tax increases are going to ultimately settle on. There could be a real rebellion at the end of that. I still believe at this point that the Democrats understand, in for a dime, in for a dollar. If they fail on this, it is going to be extremely damaging. And ultimately, Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel are going to say, you guys have to buck it up here, because it's all of us are going to sink or swim whether we can get a bill onto the president's desk or not.
It's going to be a fascinating fall to see how this all plays out.
It certainly will.
Jonathan Weisman of the Wall Street Journal, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Ezra Klein at the Washington Post, we thank you also.
Thank you
for joining us on the roundtable today. Now, healthcare, by the way, is just one of Ezra's beats at the Post. The 25-year-old journalist has also started a new food column called Gut Check. Kaylee Hartung talked with him during this restaurant week here in D.C. for our Unplugged Under 40.
I think my job is translating from experts to people. So I'm a health policy expert translator. And I think I've been, I had the advantage in this of having done healthcare policy when nobody cared, right? I was interested in the topic from a couple years back, maybe 4 or 5 years now.
That translating amounts to blogging 3,000 words and getting up to 40,000 hits on his blog a day. So to keep his sanity, he cooks.
But I got into cooking a couple years ago in DC when wasn't that long after I moved here, and I'd been through a breakup or whatever. I needed something to do that wasn't blogging, because it turned out that was a extremely relaxing thing. I mean, it's a bit like sort of carpentry for the yuppie set. You get to do something with your hands, take your mind off work, and actually create something. The problem is I have a tendency to make my pleasure my work over time.
Sure enough, that hobby led to a bi-weekly food column for the Post, Gut Check. He puts the emphasis on eating right, which he says is just as important as fixing healthcare.
But it is important, right? If you care about healthcare and you care about climate change, the production of food, this is sort of intuitive. We eat a lot of food. Clearly, that's going to be a big cost, is part of it. And one of the nice things about food is that unlike trading from a Hummer to a Prius, or move if you have to commute 25 miles riding a bike. It's something that is actually pretty easy to manipulate, right? I mean, I can decide to eat pasta and not steak, or I can decide to eat lighter rather than heavier. And so I think it's a space where you can connect pretty easily with people because it is part of their sort of everyday lives, and and people can make changes if they want. But first, you need the information.
But explaining health insurance is not so easy or appetizing, he says, and the debate has veered off into all the wrong places.
The great lie of healthcare reform is not death panels. It's not that it's going to kill your grandmother or cost $1 bazillion. It's that we're not talking about all that much. There's a creeping modesty here, which is not recognized because fundamentally the media doesn't report things all that well. I think that somewhere along the way things are not being translated accurately or correctly. We don't tend to report just every crazy thing somebody on the street corner says, but here we do, right? We're reporting the controversy, we're putting crazy people at town halls yelling about Hitler on the TV. Healthcare is pretty simple. A bunch of other countries have it. It doesn't suck like ours sucks. It's not expensive like ours is expensive. 47 million people aren't uninsured. And so you just look at it and you say, okay, well, we can do this better. And if we don't do it better, we're all going to go bankrupt, and 10,000 people are going to die unnecessarily every year. And, we're going to have all the problems we have now.
Tough stuff to be sure. But then again, a good meal can take some of the edge off. And that brought us to our 5 quick questions.
Favorite restaurant in DC?
Klein Cafe if you're having dinner on a Wednesday, but Comey if you have some money to burn.
Favorite spot for happy hour?
Bar Pilar.
Favorite DC attraction?
Politics and prose.
First thing you read in the morning?
My email where crazy people yell at me.
And your favorite person to watch under 40 in DC right now?
I think Johnny Moniz, chef at Comey, is probably America's greatest genius, currently living.
And we'll head to Ezra's favorite DC spot, Politics and Prose, for next week's Unplugged Under 40. We'll talk with 25-year-old author Nick McDonnell, who's just published his 3rd novel, An Expensive Education.
How was lunch, by the way?
Great. We were at Brasserie Beck, one of my favorite spots in DC. So.
And did Ezra give that a rating, or did you?
He's actually a vegetarian, and I didn't realize that when I made the lunch reservation, so I think I could have picked somewhere that he would have preferred more, but it turned out.
Looked like a great salad, though.
It was.
Kaylee, thanks very much.
Thanks, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us again tomorrow right here on CBSNews.com at 12:30. I'm Bob Orr. Have a great day.